Start the meeting with pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a full house, so we're all here. Yeah. Jerry distributed the minutes earlier today for the March 18th meeting. I'll take a motion for their approval.
8 minutes, we gotta say the 4th. So we'll,
Pardon me?
this is the 4th.
There were minutes that were distributed on the 18th, that were for the 3/18.
Okay, that's March 4th. I just didn't change the date.
Oh, okay. Right, so dated the 4th, but actually the 18th.
In the 18th.
So they're moved and seconded. Besides that modification, any other changes people would like to make to comments?
Who seconded it, John?
Hearing none? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Go to public comment. Is there anybody in the room that would, yes, sir?
Hi, my name is Alan Schwartz, 126 Maple Avenue. I'm a member of the tree committee. And we definitely believe that there's a need for a complete tree survey. And this will also include our town trees and our parks. And it's basically a database. And it's going to tell us type of trees we have, tells us the age, and I think most important, it's going to tell us the health of the trees. We need to know the health of the trees, whether they're healthy, and whether they really need treatment right away. So, and this is all the responsibility of the town. And I think this is, something that this town needs. A lot of towns around the area do have this already. And, we have a new tree warden, I think will be a lot of help for him too. And if anybody, but I don't know if you have the Save a Tree, I can pass it around if you need to.
What's that?
The proposal?
What is that? What are you?
Oh, this is what they're gonna do.
No,
That was distributed,
yeah.
Okay, good.
so we're all set. Thank you very much. Nobody else here, any of the attendees? No. Is there anybody who is a guest who's calling in that would like to speak? If so, raise your hand and we will give you that opportunity. All right, thank you very much. We will continue on. Speaking of trees, the next agenda item is the consideration possible action on a town match for tree inventory grant. Carl, are you taking this one?
Sure. As Alan stated, the tree committee was reconstituted about 6 to 8 months ago. They've been a very busy and active group and have been very concerned about tree canopy, tree planting. And they saw this grant come through, this proposed grant come through, and I had a grant writer using some of the money that we put aside for grant writing, write the grant. The grant was successful. It's a small grant, $20,000 or so, of which 50% comes through DEP, but it's actually federal. I think it's federally funded, but it comes through DEP, and we would match the other 50%. The grant was very competitive, and we were informed of that. And even in light of how competitive it was, we received the entirety of our request. Now, they could have prorated that a little bit down. They could have said, there were so many applicants, you requested 10,000, we're only gonna give you 8,000. But they didn't, and they obviously thought it was a good, well-written grant, justified. And that's it. So several bids were solicited. By the tree committee, Saybrook came in with the bid that is to be selected. It's not every tree in town, but it's a lot of our main roads in town. And it's, one thing I've learned over the years is you can't plant, people say, oh, I want this kind of tree. Well, if the wires are right there, you can't plant that kind of tree. So it's a lot of education, planting the right tree in the right location. You have to be worried about salt, road salt, and will the tree, is there a good street tree versus not a good street tree, which this information is out there. So, it's a good group good work by this committee that, as I said, was just recently reconstituted. So I asked the board to support it.
When at the end of the grant, what will we have and what will be different than where we are today?
I think what we will have is, number one, where we could plant new trees and what types of trees. What is the current health of the trees on that road, and what can we do to make sure those trees remain healthy and don't die off? What else?
Well, that's basically, we have none. We have no idea what type of trees we have and what their health is at this point. So this is a database, so we have the information that we can use.
And we can
Right
use
now,
it-
we have none.
And we can use it there are some state roads in here, I believe, right? Are there any state roads, some Route 1 or 154? I can't remember.
Well, no,
But-
it's mostly,
Okay.
it's,
So they'll identify areas where we might be able to plant trees. That's the gist of it.
Any other questions folks have? George?
I have a question. I mean, clearly, during storms, trees and power become a serious issue for people who lose storms. So I think it's a great idea, but I'm just wondering whether it ties into some of the other efforts that the electric company are trying to do in terms of try to prevent.
Yeah,
And I mean, I guess there's two parts to this, right? So, you're gonna identify the health of trees, and so if we identify trees which are not healthy, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but will we have funds then to try and cut those trees down? And then, but then coming back to this electric utility type thing, they seem to just want to basically clear a tree so it doesn't hit the wire. But if that tree's unhealthy, then that's just not they might as well just cut it down at that point as opposed to just trim it so that it's for the wire. And so would that be part of the?
yeah, so yes, we have money to take down dead and diseased trees. We have a budget for that. And but we get calls, Billy Claffey and I get calls frequently for people to come check out trees, dead and diseased trees, and we take down trees with some frequency if they're in that condition. With regard to how it would intersect with Eversource, we would, with trees that exist that grow into the wires, Eversource is willing to cut them back like they do on Main Street. In terms of new planting, we don't allow oak trees to be planted under wires. We don't do that anymore, especially in the town right of way. That wasn't the case, obviously, many, many years ago, because trees grow right into the wire. So we would, Eversource, we work with Eversource to not plant those types of trees. And believe me, it's, and I've told the tree committee this, it's actually harder than you'd think to convince people to plant trees on their property. I mean, I've taken out plenty of trees, and when I ask for a replacement, a lot of times people are just like, no, I don't want another tree there. What if it falls? We're not going to be working against Eversource's desire to keep the power on. We don't do that. We don't do that. Is that?
But I'm wondering whether we actually go beyond that and just, if they're just trimming trees back, but the solution is actually to cut it down at that point because of disease, it feels like they should just cut it down as opposed to just keep trimming back because they'll be trimming back again next year and the year after, right? So,
If they're living, we don't cut them down.
fair enough, sure.
If they're living, we don't cut them down.
But this database will determine whether they are.
Yeah, and this database might say there's a diseased tree, they also might say you can leave it in place for now. It's still a healthy tree. But like my beech tree in front of my house is showing signs of decay. Hopefully it won't have to be cut down anytime in the next 20 years, although it is a sign of decay. And so trees show that, but they still are living and they can still remain upright.
Just like us older senior citizens,
I'm sorry?
just like us older senior citizens showing signs of decay, but don't cut us down yet.
Not yet.
Other questions people have? Megan?
I just had a question, kind of piggybacking on what George said. I didn't get to see where this is happening, but I was curious, like, is it just the areas of town where we have canopy issues, or are you gonna be going down like Ingham Hill and Schoolhouse?
The streets.
Yeah, it's a whole list.
So Essex Road, Ferry Road, Springbrook Road, Elm Street, Lynn Street, Pennywise Lane, that just happened to show up, Sheffield Street, Old Boston Post Road, Chalker Beach Road, Baum Avenue, and Maple Avenue, from Cornfield Point to Main Street, obviously. So those are the roads.
It's 88 miles of roads.
And the following
And the
data,
parks.
the data will be collected: the species, diameter, breast height, the condition of the tree, is there deadwood, risk rating, low, moderate, high, extreme, what kind of tree care, are there overhead wires, is it lifting the sidewalk? That, another issue we run into. And location for additional trees, really important.
Okay, other questions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion as it is written to approve an appropriation in the amount of $10,855 from current fund 335 for undertaking tree inventory and further to move this appropriation to town meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any other comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate your time and efforts. Now, the agenda that was in front of us, a little different than the actual agenda. So this agenda item is the discussion and possible action on fiscal year 26 general government and Board of Education budgets. And I have in your package given everybody a handout to assist in this discussion. And just so you know, there is a line on the back of the page that printing here didn't obviously did not stay with the front of the page. So just so you can see that. Let me kick off the thinking here based on all of the conversations. George?
Good question. Did Leanne get a copy?
Yes.
Okay.
Leanne, you're all set, right?
I am all set, but I want to point out that the town operating budget in your memo, the numbers are off by 16,000 and change versus what was presented, what was approved by the Board of Selectmen, and I can get to that at a later date, but just want to make sure when the motion we use the correct numbers.
Got it. You will, that would be a great opportunity to make sure we're doing it correctly. So anyway, we've had a number of discussions. We've had all of the departments in, we've had the police department in, we've had the Board of Education in. And I think this board has had pretty healthy discussions about the information that we have received. What I'd like to do is give context for what my proposal that I have in front of you is stating. As I mentioned at our last meeting, we are, I think, seeing a certain amount of turmoil, to say the least, at the federal level. Many households in Old Saybrook are in a situation where they are living on fixed incomes or they're living paycheck to paycheck. And some of the discussions at the federal level have to do with personal income, whether it's Social Security or frankly, many people are watching their 401ks wither. And on top of that, we also have a number of households in this town that are employed either through the defense industry or the pharmaceutical industry, both of which are potentially looking at cuts coming down the line. So there's uncertainty in the personal income of a number of households. And with that uncertainty, I think it's critical that we offer as lean a budget as we possibly can. And by that, I mean really avoiding the nice to haves and also to reduce what has in the past been effectively planned surpluses on the revenue side. So what the proposal in front of you is trying to accomplish that. I'll get to the proposal in just a second. But I want to also recognize that not only is there uncertainty at the individual level, at the household level, there's uncertainty at the town level as well. We talked back and forth with Superintendent Board of Ed about what happens about federal dollars in Board of Ed. We have federal dollars coming into the town. So that what we want to do, I believe, is even though I will argue till I'm blue in the face that there are extra funds in the police services budget and the Board of Education budget, this is not the time to go after those funds. This next year, we hope the dust will settle. There'll be a better idea of what exactly is happening with federal dollars, what is happening with a new chief over at the Department of Police Services. And I think that a year from now, or 9 months from now, or I guess in Leanne's case, 4 months from now, when she starts the new budget, hopefully there will be a better way to, or more information with which to use. And I think that what we ought to plan to do is work with Leanne as she prepares to work with the departments around this whole issue of vacancy factor or something along those lines, and get that as part of the next year's budget process. Two other areas of concern that we have talked about that I don't believe we need to address tonight, specifically with votes, but I want to put them on the table as being part of this discussion. One is that as we saw with both the Department of Police Services budget as well as Board of Education budget, there is a number of line items that are budgeted at one level, and then there's a significant excess expenditure in those line items. I think there is a desire around this table for a policy going forward, which I suggest we take up at a subsequent meeting, maybe even the next meeting, in order to be able to have that in place. And then also kicked around a couple of times is the idea of kind of what alternative uses of surplus funds. How do we, as we look at surplus funds, how do we want to do it? We do have a Board of Finance policy about that, and I think we should pull that policy out and at one of our future meetings, take a look at that and say, is this policy still appropriate given where we are? Is there more that we need to do? So that's and let me then give you a run through the Board of Education and the revenue projections, and then open it up for any discussion that people may have. So the recommendation is that we reduce the Board of Education's budget as presented to us by $296,325. That number represents the all-in cost that the assistant principal of Goodwin would represent, as shown in the Board of Education's budget book, as well as the additional $135,000 that was set aside in the Board of Education budget for the strategic planning, NEAS recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. I think, as I mentioned, given where we are at, with our, trying to keep this as lean as possible, effectively adding 2 new administrators in the school system at a time where we have a declining pupil population, is not, the right way to go. I think that, hopefully there are other ways in which the Board of Education and the superintendent can meet, the needs in this regard. But I believe that, from the perspective of, budgeting, recommendation is to, cut that budget by $296,325. On the revenue side, as we talked about, the revenue, the treasurer's doing such a good job in bringing in, revenue. As she mentioned at the last meeting, we have, potentially by the end of this fiscal year, we'll have already, have investments which will realize about, $600,000 in gains in fiscal year 26. And on top of that, we will have $36 million in, funds in various interest earning accounts. Right now, earning, in that 4.5%, or in the last meeting, earning at that 4.5%. Even if you conservatively say that on the average across the fiscal year, they're earning 3%, that would be an additional $1,080,000 that would come in the way of interest income. So the recommendation is to move the $700,000 budgeted, revenue from interest to $1 million. So that, and I've given you how that works out. Obviously, not the exact numbers, and Leanne can help us with the exact numbers, but you see how that plays out, versus what the Board of Selectmen and the, Board of Education gets. So I will open the floor to discussion. If there's no discussion, I will make this as a motion.
Well, are we voting on this tonight? And
We are voting on
the
this
entire
tonight.
budget?
We are voting on this tonight.
Oh, wait a minute, just procedure-wise, are we discussing the Board of Education, are we taking these as 2 separate
Yes,
discussing
you
the
have to,
board?
Yes.
So. Okay, so are we gonna do the town budget or the Board of Education budget first?
I was going to move, the Board of Education budget first.
Okay.
So, and Leanne or Carl is gonna have to help me relative to the town budget side of it because of the revenue projection versus how we do that. So anyway, I even have a cheat sheet.
I do have a question.
Okay,
Well, it's been,
well, then,
there's a motion.
We have to make a motion
Yeah.
first and second, and then we can have a discussion.
I'll make the motion on the Board of Education, we can have the discussion, okay? We're good. So the motion is to. No, I have to make the motion. So the motion is to decrease the, Board of Education budget, which was $31,143,753, and decrease it to $30,847,438. Do I have a second?
Sir.
Second by John. Open for discussion.
When do we have to, by charter, when do we have to approve the budget? What's the date?
So we have a annual town budget meeting followed by referendum, and those dates are pretty much set. I think this year it's May 6 and 14, I want to say. I'm not positive. What?
15th and 13th.
Say what, John?
The 5th and the 13th.
Oh, 5th and 13th. Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So those, and we need to advertise the budget in the Harbor News. This month, at least, 7 to 14 days, I think, prior to that. So we need, those are, you work backwards, right? So, that's,
I was initially against the Board of Ed hiring a second principal. For 2 reasons, well, I didn't think they needed it until I heard Chris talk about the needs for students and IEPs and PPTs. But Goodwin also has 6 grades worth of kids and the middle school has 4. If they're saying that the principal there now is spending most of his day, before I vote on this, I would like to see numbers from the superintendent on how many of these PPTs and IEPs the principal is actually doing before we consider this.
Okay,
The other thing I wanted to bring up is, about 3 or 4 years ago, they changed the fourth grade to deal with the elementary school. And possibly they would consider bringing the fourth grade back to the middle school since the population, excuse me, is gonna be down next year to 277. And they also have an assistant principal already over there. Never mind the administration offices next door. So, you know, it's only a suggestion, but, I just think that putting in more bodies at this point possibly is not the answer. I think it's a matter of getting acclimated to make a change to bring the fourth grade back to the middle school to alleviate the balance that's not there. Because like he said, the kindergarten is it's double what it was years back.
Well, they have pre-K there now too.
Right.
So you have 6 grades worth of kids from pre-K to 4th grade.
Right.
So,
I mean, when you look at it that way, I can understand how he needs a vice principal, but the real reason is they have a wing over there that the 4th grade used to occupy on their own. They were safe and they were in a separate wing. That's where my kids and other kids went to school. So they're separated. It's not like they're going to, the 4th graders and the 8th graders. It doesn't happen. So I think, you know, rather than say no, I would like to say, we reevaluate this thing. You know, just because of, you know, he's new to the job. I was under the understanding, because I was looking at the yearly town books, that there was an assistant principal over here going half a day there and a half a day over at Goodwin. And now, you know, I learned at the meeting that the book was incorrect. So,
right, but I think I don't believe it's incumbent on the Board of Finance to determine how they're gonna manage things. I mean, I would say it's easier, it would be easier, rather than moving the whole 4th grade to the middle school, to actually have the assistant principal in the middle school spend time at Goodman. But, you know, it's not up to us to make
I understand
that.
that.
So, but you know, the question really is, do we need to add an administrator in the school budget? In fact, 2 administrators in the school budget at this time. And that's what is being proposed to us. And what I'm proposing is that we don't.
Well, I'd like to amend your motion and make it 125,000 cut or reduction, excuse me. And that way they can shuffle the money around the way they want. It's kind of a compromise. I mean, we're giving grace to the new police chief, the unknown police chief, with that budget, but yet we're not giving grace that he's just came in here in, I believe, the end of October, if I'm not mistaken. He would know better. So, I mean, I feel as though that, you know, to do a 125 cut, I would like to make a motion to amend the
We
motion.
have a motion on the table, we can't
Well,
make a second.
No, I can amend. I can amend.
He can move it. I believe he can.
He could, if the person who's making the motion is willing to amend.
No,
No, I think a motion.
That sounds like Congress
vote on
rules, not
amendment.
Robert's
It
rules.
can fail or,
I'm sorry?
I think he can amend, it can
I
fail
can
or.
get the Robert's rules.
You know.
Okay, all right, well,
I mean, and then you just discuss that and you vote on the amendment, and then you vote on the
Back to the
original
original
motion.
motion.
That's what I thought, but,
you've only been doing it 20 years.
what?
You've only been doing it 20 years.
I know. Bruce, is that your understanding of Robert's rules?
when you have a motion on the table, if the person who made the motion is willing to have that motion amended, then that, as well as the seconder, then that could be, or we can vote the original motion
Right,
down and then go to the second.
I suppose, I mean,
So those,
right, I mean,
those-
it's just a money issue, so maybe you do it that way.
Right. so that to me is the way. But let me respond to what Brad is saying. If you remember when we met with the Board of Education, there was also within the Board of Education, a fairly significant amount of money, that's used $200,000. That was a constant surplus within the Board of Education budget. That, when we talked about it 2 weeks ago, I was talking about utilization of a vacancy factor in order to be able to remove that out of the budget as well. And so when you talk about giving grace, my sense is we've already, very similarly to what we're talking about with the Department of Police Services, providing the same grace to the Board of Education's budget and saying, we're not taking what really would be a, planned surplus within that. We are just looking at these two new administrators that are being recommended and asking whether or not that needs it. Now, we all know, Board of Education, independent body, once we vote on the budget, they will have the opportunity to determine how they want to use the funds that the town is providing. So if it becomes a priority for them to move forward with assistant principal at Goodwin, frankly, they've got the resources already within their budget to be able to do that. So I don't think it is a big concern in that regard.
Well, I guess we can agree to disagree.
I got it. Paul?
I just remember 2 letters to the editor 2 years ago where 2 people, our chairman and our vice chairman, said that we should be concerned with investments in our school system and investments in the town, and not so much worried about the mill rate. And if you want them to take money away from somewhere to pay for these positions, that's gonna affect our ability to invest in the cooling systems and the other systems where the surpluses flow to. So I think that's something that we should consider. And I think that Brad's suggestion that we cut the 136,000, 135,000, sorry. I'm deteriorating, I'm decaying.
You are.
I see that.
Take the 135, because I didn't really get a good answer, or we didn't get a good answer about the NEAS, but they didn't have this position for the last NEAS, and they probably don't need it for this one. But I just, after listening to his explanation about the assistant principal, it just makes sense, especially, and it makes sense from what he has to deal with state mandates and stuff like that, not so much with what I would like him to have to deal with, because they have to have certain certification to do the PPTs, and I just think that if we don't put that in there, they'll just be robbing from Peter to pay Paul, and it's just gonna affect other investments that they will make, that we all make at the end of the year with whatever we have in surplus. And
Okay.
Well, and the pre-K enrollment will likely continue to potentially even grow because it's free, or will be free.
I just can't ignore what's going on in the macro environment that we're in. I don't feel this is a time to add people to a staff in a situation where we have a declining enrollment, where at 10/31, we've had a 31% decrease in students from 2009 to 2024. They're projecting another 22 people to be students not coming in next year. And we can't continue to
add people to a staff when our student body is decreasing at 2% a year. That was the average. The state average is 1.5% a year. I just can't ignore what's going on. You have a federal government that is eradicating the Department of Education. That means there'll be no policies coming down from them to administer. I mean, it's just too many things going on to add 2 more people permanently to our staff. That's just my opinion.
Well, to add what John said, I mean, just this week alone, as far as federal funding, I'm sure everyone read it. There's $150 million for our Department of Public Health and DMS laws, and they announced today 14 million in education funding here in Connecticut. I don't think we receive ESSER funds. I mean, but they're trying to determine, what localities that's going to affect. So that is concerning.
The good news is we did receive the ESSER funds, but we used the ESSER funds well and quickly. And so they're not available.
Yeah, they are not. And in fact, I asked Pamela Storti, and she gave me a list of about 30 towns that are exposed. And just like, I don't know how those towns get through it, to be honest with you. They don't have the money to return, even if so they probably, that'll be a fight.
Other comments? All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. No other comments, I'll bring it to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No.
So 3 noes and 4 yeas. Okay.
All right, we'll move on to the second item, which is revenue projections. As I mentioned, I believe that there is a significant amount of revenue on the interest and realized gains that we're not recognizing in the projected budget. It would not be a matter of decreasing the town budget. It's increasing that. Now, I'm not sure, and I can make a motion off the top of my head, but it's not a motion that is been provided to me. So I don't know whether Carl, either you or Leanne.
Yeah, I would say it's, I would just state this factually. I don't know that it's within the purview of this board.
I will.
You disagree?
I'll take you to the charter where it says that you are providing estimates of revenue and estimates of
Right.
expenditure, and this board is responsible for either voting or modifying those estimates.
The Board of Finance is an appropriations board. I mean,
We can. look it
Yeah,
up, we can
yeah.
look it up.
I don't know how this board says we want to just decide to say the town should estimate this much in revenue. That's a new one on me. But let's talk about the number.
Sure.
It seems to me I still think it would be ultimately a Board of Selectmen function, I think, I don't know how it's a Board of Finance, I really don't. But I know you're gonna go to the charter,
I mean, if you want, I'll work off the top of my head and just simply say that for the fiscal year 26 budget, the projected interest revenue will be $1 million instead of $700,000.
Yeah, I hate to set up, I'd almost prefer to get counsel on that. I didn't have notice of this, so,
Well, we did.
I mean, I'm not-
Discussed it at the last meeting.
I'm sorry?
We discussed this at the last meeting.
Yeah, but I know we discussed it, but I am pretty firm that it's not a Board of Finance motion to take. I'm not, and by the way, from where the revenue comes, I I don't know that it should all come from interest income necessarily either.
Fine.
By the way, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I'm more concerned about the mechanism on how to get there.
Process. You want to get the process.
And, so you're voting, in theory, you're voting on an appropriations budget tonight. That's what you're voting on, really. You're voting on the expenditure budget. That's what if you're not touching the town budget expenditures, and you have voted on the Board of Ed budget, were you planning on meeting in 2 weeks?
I believe so.
That, Leanne, do you think we could, I mean, if we have consensus, we could leave the revenue portion and for 2 weeks to take action on?
Well, I have to put it in the newspaper, so, and that's April 18th, or I think the meeting is something like that. I forget the exact date, but
It's the
The 15th, the
15th.
15th, Thursday, the 15th.
Yeah, 15th for us.
if the Board of Selectmen, when does the Board of Selectmen meet?
Well, it doesn't matter. That can, if it's a Board of Selectmen action, that can be done quickly. The question is, if it's going to be voted on by the Board of Finance, that would be April, it's the 2nd, 9th, 16th.
15th.
15th, yeah. 15th, so I'd have to put it in the paper.
So it would go in that, and it would go in that Thursday's paper, which 17,
That's just our regular meeting.
which would be 20, it would be
I
time.
know that.
There'd be time.
May first,
If that's what you're gonna do.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think, we only put the expenditure portion of the budget in the newspaper. So if we wrap that up tonight, that's good. I don't put the, revenue portion in per se. Well, maybe I do, but, in any event, we don't finalize the revenues until we set the mill rate. And at that point, we could modify any.
It's really the setting of the mill rate that, it's almost the setting of the mill rate that
Setting
is,
the mill rate, right? That when
that
we,
is generating the revenue portion of the budget.
right.
That's, if, I'm,
Yeah.
I am open to suggestion.
Yeah, I'd rather, my preference, and the board can do it, you can vote, but my preference is that we hit the brakes on that and figure out what the path forward is to be taken. The funny thing is, I mean, I bet you could hire 3 different lawyers, you might get 3 different opinions, I'm not sure.
We're fine.
Had enough of lawyers lately. So why don't we, why don't we do that? So that has to be advertised in,
We can meet.
and by the way, in terms of advertising, push comes to shove, you can put it in the Middletown Press the next day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's true.
so we do the Harbor News, but the Middletown Press is sufficient if we ever ran up against it. So,
So we will not make a motion on revenue tonight. We will keep that off to the side for discussion, maybe not action on the,
I'll work with you on that.
So but we do need to make a motion on the, town's operating budget. And Leanne, do you want to give me what the correct number is?
I will give you, I'll read the motion and then you can decide if you're okay with it. To approve the annual budget for the town of Old Saybrook general government for the fiscal year July 1, 2025 through June 30, 2026, as recommended by the Board of Finance in the amount of $21,995,997 as follows. General government, $19,514,389. Debt service, $2,481,588. And to move this budget to annual town budget meeting, which adjourns to referendum.
I have that.
Okay, so we have, I'll make that as a motion. Thank you, Leanne. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on that?
I believe the order was incorrect on the first budget we voted on, so I think we need to call this because secondary motions, higher rank, they interrupt or modify the main motion and are addressed in specific order of precedence. So the postpone indefinitely beats amended, which means the beats the main motion. So by me making a second motion, it amends your first motion, and that's from Robert's rules.
Okay. Would you like to vote on the general government budget and then we'll go back to
Well, the
the,
budget will be different. Will the budget be?
No, this is just town. This is just town.
okay? You ready to vote on general government?
Sure.
Okay, with that, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, I believe that's seven is it? Brett, I'm willing to go back. If you feel strongly about this and you want to vote on your motion, let's go ahead and do it.
So, there are different versions of Robert's rules. So, I did get my copy, and some of this is gobbledygook. It does suggest that the mover is in control of the motion. Brad, read yours again, read what you wrote.
Main motion first, lowest rank considered only when nothing else is pending. Second motions, second or subsequent, higher rank, and they interrupt or modify the main motion are addressed in a specific order of precedence. So
Right.
it beats amended, which beats the main motion. So the second overrides the first motion.
So I think the question was, who can modify? And that the rank may be that the mover can modify it.
Right.
And that's right. So let me read when a motion has been made, but not yet stated by the chair, they're not assuming the chair is making the motion, they're assuming the chair is moving the motion along. Whether or not it has been seconded, it can be withdrawn or modified by the mover. If he wishes to modify the motion, he should specify the modification. Any member may suggest that the mover withdraw or modify the motion, but only the mover may do so. The motion is modified before being stated by the chair. The seconder may withdraw his second. However, after a motion has been stated by the chair, it is the property of the assembly, which is this board, and the procedure for modifying it is less simple. It may be modified at any time before voting has begun by the following method. The mover rises and says, for example, Mr. President, I ask for permission to modify the motion. So, I mean, look, I'm no expert, and I don't know how old this is, but I'm just.
So the chairman can deny.
It just indicates to me that the mover is, you vote on the original motion if the mover has made it and it has been seconded, unless it's been withdrawn.
Right, that is exactly the way I understand it, and it's the way in which I've experienced it for the last 40 years. So, but
I will say that.
Why does it say this then?
To Brad's
Secondary motions are subsequent. Higher rank,
Yeah.
they interrupt or modify the main motion and are addressed in a specific order of precedence. So why does it say that then?
I'm not a person who wrote or spends a lot of time with Robert rules and more based on experience. But my experience also says that I don't want people walking out of this room feeling like they weren't heard or their motions weren't voted on. So if you would like, I'm not sure how this fits anybody's rules, Robert's or anybody else's, but I would be more than happy to go back, vote on your motion, and if your motion does not pass, re-vote on my motion, if that would make you feel better.
Well, I will allow you to hold it and, we'll deal with it as it is.
So stay the course.
And I'll ask that question.
Good enough for the future.
Okay, so we have voted on Board of Education, we voted on general government with the debt service. So I believe we have a budget in place for moving that forward. And I will move on the agenda to the selectmen.
Did we vote on the Board of Ed reduced budget completely? I know there was a motion to reduce the Board of Ed budget.
I think Brad just said,
No, I know that. I
oh,
know
we
that.
did not.
No, we need to vote on the school budget for the amount of 30 million or whatever it is.
So you
Wait a
would,
minute.
so you,
Brett,
No, on your motion.
Brett's motion
On your
was to
motion.
approve the Board of Education budget with a, 290.
So the
I mean, you made a
145.
motion to reduce the Board of Ed budget. Did you then vote on the Board of Ed budget as reduced?
yes,
You did?
yes.
There were
No,
two motions?
No, he didn't.
It was 4 to 3.
That's not what he
I
did.
think we
He
need
voted-
another motion. Oh, sorry. I think we need a separate motion because there's one motion to make a reduction. And then a second motion, which would be to approve the annual budget for the Town of Old Saybrook Board of Education for the fiscal year July 1, 2025 through June 30, 2026, as recommended by the Board of Finance in the amount of $30,847,438, and to move this budget to annual town budget meeting, which will adjourn to referendum.
So that was made, that motion?
Okay,
No,
wait,
that's not-
we did not make it that formally, but we
No, we
did,
didn't.
we did have the number in there, but if you would like, I'm more than happy to vote on that motion as stated. George?
Can I just, so Leanne, so your number is just basically what the last number that Superintendent Dresnick gave us minus, 296, 325?
My number matches, the chairman's number that he gave out in that handout that he gave out, the 30,847,438.
Thank you.
So I will take. We will, if I would like this to happen, we will take what Leanne just stated as a motion. I will make that as a motion. And we can have a second and we can vote on that. So I'll make it as a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
John seconds. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 4 to 3.
I just wanted it to be very clean on the record.
That's all. Yeah. I think if we go back and look at it,
Yeah, I
it's
Maybe I wasn't-
it's on the record.
wasn't paying attention.
All right, so we are at the selectmen's report.
So just very briefly, obviously, the chief retired, we reached a severance, it's a severance agreement with the chief. And I think, I got very exhausted just talking about it last week, but, I am happy to answer any questions. I think most of us, have probably heard the details on it. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that's really, probably the main thing. I mean, I can talk about a lot of some other stuff going on, but,
Carl, I was gonna save this for comments from the chair, but since you brought it up, I just want to take the opportunity to, thank you. Thank you and commend you for bringing this to closure. Bringing it to closure in what I believe is a very fair way. And also recognizing that having been involved in a variety of negotiations, public negotiations in my lifetime, nobody ever walks away saying, you know, and everything's good and everything's good on both sides. And so I think you did a hell of a job. I think the police commission, the support that hopefully you got from them, I think you've put the town in a good place and ready to move forward, and I thank you very much.
No, that's very kind of you, thank you. The police, I will say that, there were some moments with the police commission, everybody was civil. There were some pretty heated discussions here and there, a lot of it in executive session, as you know. Putting maybe some pressure on me, but we had good counsel, by the way, we brought in separate counsel for this, Gabe Duran from Shipman and Goodwin, and I thought Gabe really lent a level of expertise that was helpful moving, for us to get through this. So, but thanks for those comments. It was a road, I will say that. And look, I think what you say is super important in terms of we need to move forward. The perf report was out there. We need to get beyond all that. And we have at this point. And I'm working very closely with the chairman. Chubb and we talk like twice a day now, not once a day. And I provided the police commission just because they're volunteers and I'm going out there soliciting bids for firms, and we're up to 7 firms, two national firms, 2 or 3 local firms, and then some more hyper local firms to aid the police commission in the search for the next chief. And they are now going to have to select which consulting firm they use. I'm going to tell you right now, actually, we should probably put this on an agenda to put some money aside. And I'm just going to throw out a number, 30 grand, based on the estimates I've seen. It's probably in the middle, to hire a consulting firm.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Let me just add, there's money within the department's budget
That's fine.
to do that. So the question is whether we need to find other monies or whether they can just do it. And would that be out of FY 25 or FY 26?
If we can, whatever we can do in FY 25 would
Yeah.
probably be preferable.
I think
So that's fine. So why don't we talk about that?
Yep.
That is 100% fine with me. But, there's been some, questions. Why should we hire a consulting firm? There's no honestly, it's out there. There is no institutional knowledge anywhere in town on hiring this type of position. And you have a group of 7 volunteers that are the hiring authority. And I think, to get a thorough process that really looks everywhere for the next great chief in this town, that is the right way to go about it. And so that's what we're going to do. I've also been in touch with how the department's going to move forward on April 12th. Cops got to be on patrol, cops got to get paid. So I've been in touch with the chief on this, and we'll be in touch with his executive secretary and of course the new lieutenants who are away this week in training. But the department has to run the next day, and it's a very abrupt departure. So I won't go into why, but it is. So we'll leave it at that. But we are going to move forward, and it's exciting for the town. I think it really is to move on to the next police chief. And listen, Chief Spira was a chief for nearly a cop for nearly 30 years, and was with the department prior to him becoming a patrol officer. He's dedicated, and he's dedicated his life to this town. For better or for worse, he's dedicated his life to, and we should say thank you, because he's done a lot of good work for the town. And I'm not gonna say anything negative at this point in terms of there were allegations in the perf report, and I understand that, but at some point when someone serves 30 years, I think a thank you is in order. So, I want to thank the chief for his service to the town publicly. So I'll leave it at that.
Will there be an intern chief
Yeah,
name?
we're working on that.
Potentially?
We're working on that. That's kind of.
I mean, that could be a 12-month, 6 to 12-month process.
So I've been very clear, and, you know, I'm the Republican first selectman. This police commission has to hire the next chief, okay? And parties may like it, not like it, but this search cannot go into the election season. I think it has to be concluded and hired by October 1. That's the goal. And I have all the confidence in the world that the right candidate is going to be solicited by whichever consulting group we choose. And there's really only going to be 1 to 3 choices, and they're all going to be great choices. This job is a very desirable job in the state of Connecticut. And we are going to get excellent candidates. And it's not going to be a political process. We need to move on and get the next chief in there. So.
I'm not sure what is so unusual about hiring a consulting firm. The school does this every single time we get a superintendent.
Nothing's unusual.
I'm just
And
saying.
I've had a couple of people say, you can, why can't you guys do it? And why can't you? It's like, that would be making a very huge mistake.
Right.
And it's not fair to the people of Old Saybrook. People want a public process, and having someone on board to guide the police commission through that public process is going to be super helpful, and I think will give great confidence in the selection of the next chief.
I mean, the school does this, right? I mean, we do this all the time, get the public comments.
Yeah,
I
mean,
absolutely. Yeah, the way to do it.
thank you.
Other comments?
Yeah, I would just reiterate that. I mean, I shared before that I worked with PERF, I didn't,
Oh, right.
before them, I worked for a consulting firm that did a lot of work with them in DC. And we did police chief searches, across the country, and it's very specialized, it's a very important position, and we want to do it right. And I think it's, important to do that.
Thanks.
Carl, you all set?
That's
All right, we'll move on. Comments from board members? Comments? Public comment? Is there any member of the public that would like to speak? If so, please raise your hand. Then we'll move on. I made my comment. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. Okay, please say aye. All opposed? Thank you very much.